welcome to another Adventures in History. Have you ever had to settle an argument with somebody? It might have been over something big or little, but it probably wasn't very easy. Well, imagine having to settle arguments for the entire country. That's what the U.S. Supreme Court does. It's the highest court in the United States, and it makes big decisions that affect every single one of us. Supreme Court is the top of the judicial branch of the government. That means it deals with laws and how they're interpreted. The other two branches are the legislative branch, or Congress, which makes up the laws, and the executive branch, which is led by the president, which enforces laws. But the Supreme Court makes sure those laws follow the Constitution, which was our country's rule book. The Constitution created the Supreme Court, but the rules of the court were left up to Congress. The Judiciary Act of 1789 created those rules. They set the number of justices to 6 with 1 Chief Justice. They were required to meet twice a year in the nation's capital, and they gave the court the power to overturn state Supreme Court rulings that didn't align with federal or national laws. It also created a lower federal court system with circuit courts and district courts. The justices had to travel from town to town for months every year. Today, they get to stay in Washington, D.C., and people get to come to them. George Washington, our very first president, chose John Jay as the first justice. For many years, the Supreme Court would meet in the Capitol building. It wasn't until former President Taft became a justice did that change. He worked hard and convinced Congress to build the beautiful Supreme Court building we have today. The building was complete in 1935. Sadly, Taft died before construction had even started. People are allowed to visit the courtroom and see the judiciary branch in action. The justices even have reserved seating for their own guests. Across the front of the courtroom is the bench where the 9 justices we have now sit. Originally, they were in a straight line, but they had difficulty hearing each other. So adding a triangular wedge between each justice allowed everyone to see and hear much more easily. The Chief Justice sits in the middle, and the rest of the justices sit in order of their seniority, starting on his right to the most senior, his left for the second most, alternating back and forth. Each justice has a custom chair created just for them, even though all the chairs are made to look exactly alike. When there is an opening, a new justice is appointed by the president and then must be approved by the Senate. Now, this is not an easy process. They have to be well respected and known for being fair. They have to answer many questions from the senators about their history as a lawyer, judge, and personal life. If the Senate approves, they get to join a very special group of people who make a difference in our country. And once they're on the court, they serve for life unless they choose to retire. Some justices have made history. We have John Marshall, who was the longest serving justice for 34 years. You've got Thurgood Marshall, who fought for civil rights and was our first African American justice. There's Sandra Day O'Connor, who broke barriers for women as our first woman justice. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who fought for women's rights. The Supreme Court hears important cases about rights, freedoms, and fairness. Here are a few famous ones. In Brown versus Board of Education, they said schools couldn't separate students by race. Every child in America deserved a good education. In Miranda versus Arizona, they ruled that people must be told their rights when they are arrested. That's why you hear you have the right to remain silent in movies and TV shows. These cases changed how people are treated in school, in court, and across the country. There are several levels to the court system, and most cases start and end in smaller courts. You might even have one of those types of courthouses in your town. If people don't agree with the result, they can appeal. That means asking a higher court to look at it again. And they can continue to appeal and move higher and higher in the system. Only a small number of cases actually make it to the Supreme Court. Usually fewer than 100 in a year, even though thousands try. It's kind of like getting a golden ticket. The Supreme Court only picks the most important cases that will affect the entire country, not just 1 or 2 people. The only time a case doesn't need to go through lower courts is if there is a dispute between 2 states. Those go straight to the Supreme Court. An example of this is when New York and New Jersey were disputing over who owned the island the Statue of Liberty sits on. When justices hear a case, they listen to both sides, like a courtroom debate. And they don't decide right away. First, they ask lots and lots of questions. Then they think carefully, they study the Constitution and past cases and discuss it amongst themselves. When it's time to decide, the justices vote. The side with at least 5 votes wins. Then they write an opinion that explains their decision, and that opinion becomes the law for everyone in the country. The Supreme Court protects your rights, like your freedom to speak, practice your religion, and go to school safely. Even if you don't see it on TV every day, the court's decisions shape how we live, learn, and grow. The Supreme Court may seem far away, but it's really the people's court. And one day, one of you could be sitting in one of those chairs. That is the Supreme Court, guardians of justice and protectors of the Constitution. Hopefully, you enjoyed what you heard today and learned something new. Please like and subscribe.